I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Ag Forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, what I'd like to introduce you to Niña. Niña put together a little forecast video for me on the other day. I'd like to show you what her report was out of Fort Worth, Texas. So here we go, Niña.
Give us a weather report.
It's windy outside.
It was windy outside, and I appreciate the video. It made my day. I really love this stuff. Well, let's go. Let me show you what was going on there, Niña, because you were on the backside of a massive winter storm, and this is the one that went into the western part of the United States last week, dumping a lot of snow across the Sierra Nevada and a lot of rain into California. And I'll show you those snowfall totals in a moment. But as this cyclone crossed here, right through the midsection of the country, big snow event in parts of the Midwest, a lot of rain out ahead of this. But you were on the backside where we had much drier conditions and very windy conditions. And in fact, Niña, take a close look right here. You see this moving through this region? This was dust, another dust storm that's two this month we've had through parts of the high plains getting down here into the southern plains. And I'm going to zoom in and show you something else special that was going on there. Because in addition to that, even had an undular borer that went racing out ahead of this. Now, this was primarily caused by the leading front, so this isn't from outflow from a thunderstorm, but it's a series of gravity waves running over the top of a relatively stable layer in the atmosphere here. But look at the dust on the back side of this. Another massive dust storm here racing through parts of the southern plains. Okay, how much did we get out of these last few systems? Well, here's our last 7 days of total accumulated precipitation. And this, of course, would be liquid equivalent. And not only did we see amounts here across parts of the West really help recover what was missing from the beginning of the season. We have a long way to go, but we're recovering here. When you come into the midsection of the country, now remember, this was actually from two separate systems. We did get quite a bit of precipitation from parts of Missouri through Kentucky, getting over to the east. I mean, look at this part of the Mid-Atlantic and the Carolinas, just quite a bit of heavy precipitation. And this extends into the eastern Corn Belt and the central Corn Belt as well. Once again, though, what we continue to see here is that the northern plains getting up here into parts of Montana, and then right here along the front, well, really just getting into the high plains, particularly of Colorado, stretching down to this part of Texas, we continue to see drier conditions. In other words, the systems are jumping over the rain shadow here and then reinvigorating across parts, well, primarily through the Ohio River Valley. Now, in my report last Thursday, I said to expect change in these areas. We had the change here through parts of the Midwest. There is a system coming through later that I'll show you here that's going to cut through this area. We are seeing today the system that went through the Midwest hammer this region and on up into the Northeast. And I've got a lot to share with you about the cold air that's coming and that's really going to change up what's going on around the Great Lakes. But first, what I want to do is I want to show you the latest update of this map. And I want you to probably keep your focus out here in the west, because this was the map from last Thursday and this was the map from yesterday. If I go back and forth, you can see, ready? The change that happened in here in the Sierra Nevada mountains. And we picked up a lot of snow. And we've helped to eliminate some of the snow deficit that has been right here in this part of the Midwest. Now, I would like for you to just see, I hope you're playing this in full screen in HD. I made some snowfall maps for you if you'd like to take a look at them. This is the national map. I'm going to zoom in first here on the West Coast. Now, my original snow color bar over there on the right doesn't really work well for these big events that hit the Sierra Nevada mountains. But before we look at them, like we were discussing, right here just north of the Snake River Valley, several inches down here in Arizona. Again, this is the last 6 days of total accumulated snowfall. But I readjusted my color bar so that you could see that we did have some of the highest peaks in the Sierra Nevada, picking up well in excess of 100 inches of snow here. So this was a major event. And this means we were adding roughly 10 inches of liquid equivalent. And once all of the data are finally in, we'll take a look at what that snowpack looks like and also what the total liquid content of the snow water is. Throughout the Midwest, this was a tricky one to forecast. A lot of very heavy rain moved in, but then snow came through on the back side of this, putting down a few inches of snow here. So take a moment, pause it, take a closer look if you'd like. But this is where the map is going to change a lot today. Now, this was through 6 p.m. last night, but the system went through the Midwest is now charging up the East Coast, and it is sitting right off the coast as a powerful low. You can see it here on radar. This goes back basically over the last 24 hours. We did bring some snow on the backside of this all the way through southern Indiana, down here into Kentucky, Tennessee. And look at the heavy rain that spread out to the south of it along the upper level front. But the system is transitioning and heading up the East Coast today. Meanwhile, the West Coast is more action here. We still have better onshore flow, Northern California to Oregon and coastal Washington. And I'll show you in a few moments the system that's coming through there. But our all hazards weather map points to winter storm warnings stretching from Pennsylvania and Maryland all the way to parts of Maine with winter weather advisories surrounding that. We'd have some coastal flood watches too here in parts of Delaware. The backside of this, we have fog, and then as you come into the system that's moving its way into the west coast, we still have wind advisories, flood watches along the coast, and a winter storm watch here along the Sierra Nevada. Okay, here it is. Let's get into the high-res stuff first. We'll pause this early this morning. We'll focus on the East Coast storm first. Now, we do have a bit of a mixture early this morning in terms of ice accumulation right in through this region here that does cut near Washington, D.C. And that's the tricky rain-snow line to forecast today. But the position of this low is well enough offshore that the high pressure that's built in behind it, cutting through the Midwest, but all the way up into Ontario, has packed in enough cold air to really put down a very heavy snow corridor right in through here throughout the day today on Monday. Now on the backside, all the way over to Ohio and getting into the Appalachian Mountains here, we're going to continue to see those snow showers linger. So we're going to pick up a little bit more there, but this system will slowly work its way off the coast. It's a 992 low. That's relatively deep. And by the time we get into Tuesday afternoon, we're still seeing the snow on the backside of this first low moving here on off the northeast. Now, in the midsection of the country, quieter start to the week. In fact, we're going to see a warm-up, too. I'll show you in a few moments out ahead of this big cold air blast. But high pressure does set up here in the midsection of the country through middle of the week. But if you watch this again, keep an eye on the west coast. You can see the moisture coming out of the southwest throughout the day, today and tomorrow. And then our next coastal low dips down right here, again, bringing more snow to parts of Washington and Oregon. And we need to keep building up that snowpack in that region. Now, to see where this is going, we got to switch over to the European model. And I'll pause this. Let's get it out to where we've already seen here. This gets out to Tuesday, and it will stop there. So you can see the load that just moved right along the coast and the persistent strong winds and potential for heavy snow. I'll show you the snowfall amounts in a few moments, but let's see where this pattern's going after that. High pressure builds into the Midwest. We do have a low moving through the Canadian prairie here throughout the day on Wednesday into Thursday that heads basically from Alberta straight through over to parts of Ontario up into this part of the Hudson Bay. But emerging from the west coast, as you saw by the middle of this week, this is now Thursday morning, there is a low taking shape right here in parts of Kansas. Now, out ahead of it, can you see where the high pressure cell is? There's going to be a lot of warm air advection, warm air blowing up from the south, basically pushing the rain-snow line pretty far to the north. So we'll see the snow Thursday morning setting up right in through this region. I'll show you the snowfall amounts in a few moments. And this low takes shape basically from Kansas through Missouri and then heading towards Chicago. Now, this puts the heaviest snow on the northern side of this, right in through this area here, from Iowa to Wisconsin and back into parts of Michigan. So where all that snow just came down in Illinois and Indiana, it looks by the end of the week it's going to be too warm for us, and we're going to be on the rain side of this until this system goes through. So you see that by midnight on Thursday, getting into Friday morning, very, very strong northwest wind. Switch over to snow. This is going to melt and then refreeze and make for a nasty go of it. There's a benefit to this freeze-thaw cycle into what this does to soil tilth and busting up the soil, and it helps to get some of that moisture in, which is what we want to see this time of year. But it makes for very hazardous conditions for driving, for just kind of life in general in that area. So this is through Friday afternoon, getting into Friday evening. That cyclone moves up in Ontario, so you can see the snow here. But what comes behind this? Look at the high pressure building in from Canada right there. Look at this. And as this high pressure cell comes in early next week, I mean, this is a powerful high. This is where the lake effect snow that I talked about last week starts to really crank up because the lake's largely unfrozen. And this is some brutally cold air coming in for the weekend and early next week. And it is going to clear things out and set up for a different view of things going into the middle of the month. And I'll show you that in a few moments. So that's walking you through the next 7 days or so. Now, how much snow are we talking about? High-resolution NAM model. Just take a moment and look at this because you're going to see quite a bit of consistency between the models. And so we do see the heaviest corridor right in through here of possibly 10, in some locations upwards of 20 inches. This is what the European has in through this area. And I'll tell you, there is enough liquid equivalent in this that if the 10-to-1 snow ratio is the right ratio, we could see these heavy amounts here of 10 to 15 plus inches in through this area, and that gets into New York City as well. From the European, I want to take you over to the National Digital Forecast Database. So this is coming from the National Weather Service. And maybe we should linger most on this map because I think this is what we're going to see. And I think the National Weather Service has a pretty good handle on this. So that's what we're expecting in terms of snowfall totals in the Northeast. But let's back out, look at the rest of the country. Over here on the right, this is just the 0Z operational European model. So right in through here with that second system, remember the one that's coming through midweek this week toward Thursday? That one has a narrow quadrant right in through here, possibly picking up 2 to 4, maybe 5 inches of snow. But as we said, it's going to set up over the Great Lakes where our greater snowfall amounts are likely. So we can use that and then come over to this map and say, here's the probability of grabbing another 3 inches of snow by the time we get out to Sunday evening. So you can see the snowfall amounts picking up in and around the Great Lakes. Again, this is from the first system that's rolling through here, and the west still with good flow in the near term here, adding quite a bit of snow, as you can tell from this map. Okay, so from there, I would like to show you just total accumulated precipitation from the European model. And again, this is through next Sunday evening, but what I'd like to do is put this into better context, because Niña, you're overall pretty dry down here in Dallas-Fort Worth area. And when we compare it to normal, we can see that parts of the southern plains, getting back into the Ohio River Valley, after the first system goes through, we do have a relatively quiet week, albeit one where the temperature is going to change dramatically from middle of the week to the weekend. So just take a quick snapshot here of what things look like for the next week in terms of precipitation anomalies. So here's the change. By Monday, we can see the ridge that's building into the Gulf of Alaska, and look at the size of this ridge that is here between the Hudson Bay and Greenland. And what that's allowing to have happen is it's allowing to really displace the colder air on this side of the northern hemisphere, whereas before it had been going over to the other side of the northern hemisphere. Take note of this subtropical ridge down here as well. I'll show you why in a few moments. As we get out to day 10, ridge building into Alaska, we still have the higher than normal heights here, and therefore the flow is going to be coming in this direction before running out into the North Atlantic. So we're expecting this corridor to be the axis of the coldest air moving out of the Canadian prairie all the way at times to the Gulf Coast and East Coast. But the question, like I said, is how long does it stay along the East Coast? Because there are higher heights and there is some semblance of subtropical ridging here. So by day 15, this is where the cold air seems to be in place, and we're going to have shots at colder air making it clear to the East Coast. But as I always say, it's going to be anchored right in through this particular area. Now, before I show you that cold air, take a look at what this does to our precipitation patterns for week 2. We do go over to drier conditions compared to normal across the West Coast. This will be an area where we're going to see more routine, regular precipitation. But it is interesting to see that through week 2, the East Coast is favored over on the drier side of things. I have seen the models advertise a few storm systems during that time period. So I think this is going to be the area that I'll call into most question going into week 2 based on the current setup of the atmosphere. I think we're actually going to have more active East Coast weather. Now, back to those temperatures. Over the last 30 days, this is not what we expect when there is a La Niña. That's for sure. It's to be so warm throughout much of Canada and really the lower 48. Well, as we've seen over the last week, we have started to build up quite a bit of cold air across the west, especially in through this area. And I want to show you where these temperatures are going because over the next couple of weeks, really specifically looking here at February 9th through the 16th, with that large ridge building here and into Alaska and into the Arctic, where we still have a very negative Arctic oscillation, you can see where the cold air is being displaced. Some of it here in this part of Russia and Northern Europe, and the other piece is here in this part of North America. So we're now really just pushing that cold air away from the poles. But it's going to take some time. Here's today's high temperatures and departure from normal. Let's get this playing and show you tomorrow. Look at the warm-up that happens in the midsection of the country while the East Coast stays cold through middle of the week. But we're going to be seeing here in parts of Texas all the way up to the plains, temperatures 10 to 20 degrees above average. As we go into Wednesday, it starts to push a little bit to the east. So this is the thaw that's going to happen where that snow came through by Thursday. But then remember, we're watching that next system pull through, and behind it on Friday, well, these are the maximum temperatures and departure from normal as you go from Friday into Saturday, and from Saturday into Sunday. We have some brutally cold air. First real significant cold shot of air we've seen in a while racing through the plains down into parts of the central and eastern part of the United States. Now this is Sunday's max temperatures. Let me show you Sunday's min temperatures. That's what this next figure is. So you can start to see here that Sunday morning, and then again on Monday morning, we're going to have our temperatures down here in the minus 10 to minus 20. And on Monday morning, I think in the Canadian Prairie, which I apologize is not shown on this map, we might see temperatures that might be in the minus 25, maybe to minus 30 range when we talk about Fahrenheit here. So very cold air coming in at the end of next weekend. Okay, how long does it last? Day 5 through 10. You can see the pattern is well established here as to where the warm air is going to be and where the cold air is. This is what happens when you displace that cold air over the Arctic, and both models agree. And again, taking this out to day 10 through 15, which gets us into mid-month, it's going to have multiple shots of cold air that come through this area. All right, that seems to be the mainstay of this flow. Now from here, I would like to just show you the week 3 forecast. So this gets us all the way out to February 18th. And the models continue to advertise that, but the GFS, which is on the left and the European on the right, do have a little bit different view of it, with the European keeping the west coast much cooler. But remember I told you about that subtropical ridge to keep an eye on, about the only place that we see staying warm consistently in the models, well, warmer than average, excuse me, would be the south and southeast. So we'll keep a close eye on that moving forward. It is not to say we won't get shots at colder air coming through here. That's going to happen. But when you average a whole week together, those shots of cold air seem to be brief over parts of the southeast. Now, I want to address something that I put in the last video. This will be where we're going to finish today, about what I meant about a fading La Nina. So when you look at this particular map, this was January 30th ocean temperatures. We're still quite cold here. So this La Nina is maybe it's past its peak, but it's La Ninas take a long time to fade. And I mentioned something about keeping an eye on cold water here, not now, but as we move into spring. I just want to address a couple of things. First, the fading La Nina. So this is a cross section going down in the ocean here, all right, from basically Australia over towards South America. As the animation continues to play, we just start to see the cooler water that's in place here. Well, it's not getting colder. And we even see some warmer anomalies showing up right here along the ocean surface. And that's where these are coming from. And in addition to that, we can also take a look at what's going on with the trade winds. Now, going back to January 1st to January about 21st, these strong easterly bursts of wind, which are very characteristic of La Nina, were slamming into some westerly winds here, giving us rise right around 120 east. That's where the MJO is in phase, 4 and 5. Now, then we saw a break in the easterly winds, and they're forecast to come back on, as you see here. But you see how they've shifted their position a little bit farther here to the east, and that's going to let the MJO move to the east with it, which means the MJO is going to start to move over into phases, 6 and 7, and it seems to be wanting to get tangled up and stay here. But my point is to say that if the La Nina begins to fade, this could let the MJO begin to move and break away from being stuck like it has been in phases 3, 4, 5 on this side of the diagram, which is what we expect during a La Nina. But it's going to take quite a while for that to happen. March, April, and May, again, we still see the cooler water in place here, with warmer tongue here and warmer tongue of water on this side in the Atlantic. But as I mentioned, I said watch this particular area right in here for cold water. This is March, April, and May. This would be May, June, and July. Now we still have the warmth here, and what seems to be left of the La Nina is still hanging out in the southern hemisphere. But at this point, the models are not calling for this to go over cold, as you can see. And I just want to finish with telling you why we watch that. So historically, when we think about the Midwest, now this is Midwest only, so I'm sorry, but that's where I'm going to focus. We are a very feared weather pattern in midsummer is to get a big ridge to set up over parts of Minnesota, Wisconsin, into Manitoba, Ontario, that particular area. And if that happens, we tend to get a trough that's here in the Gulf of Alaska. So the jet stream builds into a large ridge in this region. Now, one of the many factors that get the atmosphere into that position is if you've got quite a bit of warm water here and then very cold water that comes off the west coast of the United States. So historically, there's actually a negative 0.6 correlation coefficient with cold water in this area and heat and drought in the Midwest. So I watch this very carefully this time of year. I mean, you can see the years I'm talking about here for this particular pattern to set up, as it is just something that concerns me about drought later in the year. So I wanted to finish with that just to give you some perspective, but I appreciate your attention and hope you all have a great rest of your week. Thank you.